As we approach the new year in 2023, it is time to officially say goodbye to the year 2022. Are the Milwaukee Brewers better than they were a season ago? Can they still improve? Certainly they can. It's whether or not they want to improve in the free agent market. But it's officially time we wave goodbye to 2022 and see if 2023 can be any better. Stay tuned in. You are Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Brewers fans, welcome back into the Locked On Brewers podcast. Thank you for always making Locked On Brewers your first listen each and every day. Do not forget we are free and available on all podcast platforms. That's right, Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, there are so many others. If you don't mind leaving a review, good, bad, or indifferent, I will accept all of it. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, less than 150 subscribers away from 1,000. So if you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on all those wonderful apps I just mentioned, go over there on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, drop a like, and help us build up that channel. You can also find us on Facebook at Locked On Brewers Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Snyder. Of course, for the past 2 or 3 weeks here, I've been telling you I'm just like you, a fan with a mic in front of my face, a lifelong diehard Milwaukee Brewers fan. I'm actually recording this podcast minutes away from American Family Field. That's right. The roof is closed. It's a little cold outside, but that is home, as you know it and I know it, to our Milwaukee Brewers. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Snyder. Really appreciate you guys letting me steal some of your time to talk about our Brewers. Some of you may be off of work. Some of you may be off of school. If you're like me, you're off of school and you're off of work, but you're still doing this lovely podcast and you're tuning in and I'm recording and we're making it happen. As always, as you guys know, Locked On Brewers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's always a fun time of year. The excitement a few days ago of opening gifts up on Christmas morning, which, by the way, a show note, I hope all of you had a wonderful holiday with your loved one. There wasn't an episode the last few days. I was enjoying some time with my family. I had a great time. I hope you guys all did as well. But look, this is a good time of year where a lot of folks in general like to reflect on the past season, the past year of their life. And for us, it's talking about the Milwaukee Brewers, a season of, as you guys know, of many ups and downs for the crew. So we're going to go ahead in this first part of this segment and just kind of take a look at what 22 was for the Milwaukee Brewers. Keep in mind, they finished 86-75, a game out of the playoffs to the Philadelphia Phillies, who eventually went on to lose the World Series. But I kind of wanted to just look at what transpired over the course of 2022 for the Milwaukee Brewers. I've told you guys this before, and I'll keep saying this. I think this is the golden age of Milwaukee Brewers baseball. Of course, the 80s were fun. You had the 82 season, which is still celebrated. But I think this is a big part in what is going to be the Milwaukee Brewers history in this 4 out of 5. What is it now? 5 out of 6. 4 out of 6 of the years in the playoffs. So again, a disappointing year last year overall. A good start to the season, just didn't go the way the Milwaukee Brewers wanted to. But let's just go over a little bit of some of the highlights from a year ago. Again, trading for Hunter Renfroe just prior, if you guys remember it, I believe, I'm going off the top of my head here. It might have been just hours prior to the lockout in December of 2021, where they sent Jackie Bradley Jr. back to Boston and acquiring Hunter Renfroe. They signed Andrew McCutchen to a 1-year deal in March, right after the lockout. And you know, a lot of people were excited about those two deals. Again, Jackie Bradley Jr. wasn't a fan favorite in the Milwaukee Brewers fan base for the most part. He had a disappointing year in Milwaukee. I think that's putting it lightly. Getting Hunter Renfroe, who was your best hitter a year ago. Obviously, he is no longer part of the team going forward. We'll talk about what that looks like for 2023 later on in the show, but he obviously is not part of it anymore. But you did trade Jackie Bradley Jr. I think that was a positive for the Milwaukee Brewers, and it's certainly proved to be true when Hunter Renfroe had a better year than I think a lot of people anticipated, both offensively and defensively. Now, Andrew McCutchen had some moments, had some ups and downs. I think he was a veteran piece that the Milwaukee Brewers ownership then president of baseball operations, David Stearns, probably assumed would not be an everyday player, but a guy that could come into the locker room, be an everyday leader in that clubhouse on and off the field, and a guy that proved to be what a lot of people looked up to be. I think you heard a couple Brewer players throughout the course of the year talk about him being their favorite player back to his MVP days there in Pittsburgh. So, those were your two bigger moves, of course, in the offseason. And then you enter the season. Yeah, you start off at a historic pace for the Milwaukee Brewers. But there came the All-Star break, and we've covered it on this podcast before. You guys have all seen it. Most of you probably have your own opinions about it. The Milwaukee Brewers traded away their All-Star closer at the time, Josh Hader, to the San Diego Padres. Of course, they got Robert Gasser, Esteury Ruiz, Danielson Lamet was in that trade, who the Brewers just designated for assignment prior to even him coming to Milwaukee. So we didn't see Lamet here in Milwaukee. But again, that trade's yet to be determined at the time. Massive loss. You're 7-1 following the All-Star break. If you're a Milwaukee Brewers fan, you probably feel pretty good out of that week or so after the All-Star break, especially where you were in the division. Things were looking up. You were getting healthy. But again, you traded him away. Turned out to not be such a good trade into the year. You don't go to the playoffs. You flame out. Devin Williams struggles in the back end of the bullpen. But that trade is kind of yet to be determined because they did use one of those pieces to acquire an all-star, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. So again, yet to be determined. If you're looking at just solely 2022, of course, that trade is awful. I'm not a fan of it then. I'm not a fan of it now. But if William Contreras, Wild Bill, as they called him down in Atlanta, turns out to be what he was in Atlanta, I think Brewers fans can start to come around on that trade, including myself. So again, at the moment, during that course of the 2022 season, it's a bad trade. Looking back at it, going into 2023, could it be better? It has the potential to be better, but we'll see about that. Of course, the Milwaukee Brewers also traded, very active. I mean, if there's a constant theme in Milwaukee, it's activity. The Brewers are active during, after, before the season. I mean, they're all the time trading for right-hand pitcher Matt Bush. Yes, people probably forget, but that was a thing. They did do that. Again, had some ups and downs, not necessarily as consistent as I would assume David Stearns wanted them to be. And again, if you look back at 2022, the start of that season, now again, the lockout, everything got pushed. The schedule was crammed into one. They didn't really miss any game. They didn't want to miss any games going into the post lockout. And the Brewers started off at a historic pace, and it was a good season. And you look back at that roster, and we'll compare the two rosters, but I wanted to pull up the starting day roster. Now, keep in mind, Luis Urias was not on that roster, but you had Willy Adames at shortstop. Keston Hiura was in your utility infield. And again, he had some moments in 2022 that makes you scratch your head. And I think if you're a Brewers fan, if you're a Keston Hiura fan, you have some moments with the leadership in Milwaukee, the management, on how they utilized him and was it proper. But again, Keston Hiura, I think his future definitely remains in question. Of course, Rowdy Tellez was your first baseman. Colton Wong was out there at second base. We talked about Hunter Renfroe, who played most of right field. Andrew McCutchen shared time in the outfield. Lorenzo Cain, people forget, just kind of retired, I guess, in the middle of the season. He was let go by the Milwaukee Brewers, but then eventually did retire following that. And obviously Christian Yelich, Tyrone Taylor was out there for you. And again, not much it has necessarily changed. I think a lot of it's going to stay the same. We'll talk about what a lineup 1 through 9 could look like going into 2023. But your bullpen is Trevor Gott. You don't have Josh Hader anymore. That was in 2022, obviously. Jose Urena, Devin Williams is obviously still here. Your starting pitching is pretty much intact. I think obviously Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta. What are you going to do with Aaron Ashby? How are you going to utilize Ethan Small? Those are all questions, obviously, going in to 2023. But your bullpen and starting pitching, I think, is kind of on par from where it was a year ago. Now, obviously, the Brewers are in need of one of two things, either a closer, or if you're going to put Devin Williams as a closer, you need a setup man. So that's the question mark as far as pitching goes compared to 2022 going into 2023. But we will look at 2023. I promise. Are the Milwaukee Brewers better in 2023 going forward than they were in 2022, excuse me. But before we do that, I have to tell you about the fine folks over at BetOnline.net. I'm telling you guys right now, it is the #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl seasons heating up. The Badgers play. Are they going to win? Go on betonline.com. Check out the odds. You got basketball season. They got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, and I'll tell you guys, this is the #1 rule. You better love this podcast first. You can find those on betonline.net as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. So we reviewed a little bit of what 2022 was like for the Brewers. Of course, we talked about them missing out on the playoffs, literally by a game, where a team that beat them out ended up going to the World Series, which seems to be a common theme for the Milwaukee Brewers, the Braves, the Dodgers, Phillies, Nationals, just to name a few of the past couple of seasons. But a big trade that we talked about, it resulted in a mess, talking about the Josh Hader trade in many different ways. But can 2023 be any different? And I think it can. And I'm being optimistic. And usually I like to get on this podcast behind this microphone and drag the ownership for the lack of movement and the lack of free agency. And I will continue to do that. But I have to give them a little bit of credit where credit is due. And I think most of Brewers fans will agree with me on this one. I think anytime you add an all-star catcher at any position, literally any position, 1 through 9, bullpen, whatever it may be, it is big time. And that's exactly what the Milwaukee Brewers did in acquiring William, or as they call him down in Atlanta, Wild Bill Contreras. If you guys have not heard the interview with Paul Burt, if you go back to, I want to say it was early of last week, he covers the Braves. Obviously, he's a former major league pitcher himself. He had massive praise for Contreras, and I'm quoting him as calling him could be the best catcher in all of Major League Baseball. That's big time. So again, the potential for that Josh Hader trade to improve is there. And I think we'll see a lot of that come to fruition, hopefully, if you're a Brewers fan, in 2023 in William Contreras. Will he DH? Will he catch? Who cares? You need his bat regardless. So I think it's going to be good for the Milwaukee Brewers. Of course, we've talked about a lot of the trades, and a lot of those trades included arms to the bullpen. I think the new president of baseball operations, again, that's a new change going into 2023. Of course, that happened in 2022, but president of baseball operations, Matt Arnold, is taking over the Milwaukee Brewers and heading into 2023 as his first season. Of course, acquiring Jason Junk. We've seen that as they traded away Hunter Renfroe, as we talked about, who was their best hitter a year ago. Joel Payamps and Elvis Pagora, just to name a few more arms that are going to be new into the Milwaukee Brewers bullpen. So the bullpen taking a little bit of shape here as we head into 2023. And speaking of taking shape, you have a few young talent, youth movement, as they call it, going onto the 40-man roster for the Milwaukee Brewers, including Garrett Mitchell. Now, we've seen a little bit of him last year. You hope he can replicate a few of what, moments he had a year ago. Bryce Terrain is a guy that a lot of people are extremely high on. Is he going to be your starting second baseman? We'll talk about what 2023's opening day roster can look like in comparison to what we went over for 2022. And of course, Joey Wiemer is also a name that is thrown out there for another youth movement type of guy for the Milwaukee Brewers. Is that the direction they're going to go in? It certainly seems like right now, with the lack of free agent moves, that's going to be the possibility. But again, a lot yet to be determined. It is only December 28th, so there is still time for the Milwaukee Brewers and the front office to make moves, whether, again, that's going out into the free agent world or making more trades. And if you haven't been reading up on Brewers rumors, they have been active, and just literally just go to Google, find a verified website. I prefer reviewing thebrew.com. I love those guys. The Brewers have been active, including trying to go out and get Sean Murphy. Now, of course, they were involved with that trade and acquiring William Contreras, but there was a little bit more to that trade. So if you have the time and the ability, I would do a little bit of research on that and kind of gauge where they are. So it seems that trades are the way the Milwaukee Brewers are trending going into 2023. Now, we talked about it before. I think compared to 2022, going into 2023, your starting rotation is about the same, right? You know what you're getting out of Corbin Burns. You know what you're getting out of Brandon Woodruff. You know what you're getting out of Freddie Peralta. And of course, there is Jason Alexander. There is Aaron Ashby. You're going to have guys like Ethan Small. You're probably going to at some point see Robert Gasser up here, the left-handed pitcher that the Brewers acquired in that trade for Josh Hader, which we've talked about enough already on the show. So again, I think starting rotation is just as steady as it was a season ago. And a season ago, I'm talking about 2021, where you did win 95 games with the starting pitching being the anchor of that team. So again, we talked a little bit about the bullpen. Is it a concern in the back end? It could be. We've seen Devin Williams struggle, but again, I think the Brewers have a ton of faith in him as to be their guy in the closer position. The only question I would have, if that's going to be the case, is who is going to be your setup guy? If he's on the roster, who is it going to be? And if he's not on the roster, what are you going to do to acquire that guy? Is it a committee type of thing? We've seen that before. A little bit of last year, they were trying out different guys. Taylor Rogers, who we'll talk about, is on a new team going into next year, was that guy at certain points last year. So again, you love to see them add a free agent, maybe trade for a third baseman. We could talk about names all day long. But again, bottom line, I like this roster currently better than I did a year ago. I think it is younger. You're going to see more speed on the base path. You're going to see an offense try to stress out a defense more so this year. I think Craig Counsell is going to be more aggressive on the base path, and you hope that at some point down the line they do add maybe a name or two via trade or free agency, but we'll see. And speaking of deals and signings, we've discussed some of the year for the Crew. What else has really happened around Major League Baseball the past week or so? It's been busy. It has been a hot stove the last month or so. Since I've taken over this podcast, it has been super busy. So let's find out some of the latest deals. But first, as you guys know, it is New Year's Eve. A lot of you probably already making plans at the time to get together and celebrate the new year. And as the host of this podcast, the new host of this podcast, I just ask you guys to be safe. It can happen so easily. You're out with your friends or coworkers. You're putting back a few drinks, Miller Lights, some Leinenkugels, whatever it is. And a few obviously becomes too many. It's time to go. And for a moment, you're calling for a ride and you think, nah, I'm good. I know what I can do. I live right down the road, but you think you can make it home okay. But what are the odds you get pulled over? And even so, what's worse that could happen? You lose your license, you lose your job, maybe you total your car, maybe. What about you kill someone? It only takes a mistake to change your life or someone else's. And I mean that in forever. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. The Brewers have yet to be active in the free agent market this season, but that doesn't mean that nobody else has. Let's check out some of the deals around Major League Baseball and see what has been happening. Of course, maybe you're new to the world, maybe you're new to baseball, but the biggest talking point is Carlos Correa deal that has really just constantly been a question, I think, surrounding Major League Baseball. Now, if you recall, about 2 weeks ago, he had a deal lined up with the San Francisco Giants. They were all set, ready to do the press conference, and a medical concern arose during their visit, and it was postponed. It eventually backed out of that deal. So Correa and his agent, I believe it's Scott Boras, then went to the Mets, which again sounded like a deal was in place, pending medical concerns. And I would assume the holdup with that deal is likely the same concerns that the Giants had there in San Francisco. So as far as we know, Carlos Correa is still the number one free agent currently on the market, does not have a deal in place. But again, I would monitor that. I think something would likely be coming pretty soon here for that, because I don't think a guy like Carlos Correa is going to be on the market, whether or not there's concerns or not going forward for him. So To our partners to the south, our buddies to the south, Chicago Cubs inking Drew Smyly to a 2-year deal. The second year is a player option, I believe. I did like this one. I think that the Cubs are doing some good things with their pitching, getting former Brewer Brad Boxberger. Obviously, they were active for Dansby Swanson. So I hate to say it, the Cubs are making good moves, but those aren't bad moves. And I do like that for the Chicago Cubs, for a team that's at least trying to figure out their identity going forward. If you guys are tuning in to the first time of this podcast, maybe the second or third time, and you haven't heard me talk about Craig Kimbrell, he's a guy I wanted the Milwaukee Brewers to go out and get, obviously, to lock down the ninth, even maybe the eighth inning as a setup guy. But again, he was a guy I wanted to see nonetheless here for the Brewers. He did end up signing a 1-year contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. Again, runner-up for the World Series. He signs for a 1-year, $10 million deal. If you're me, maybe you are, you would have done that deal in a heartbeat. Again, he's a guy that provides instant playoff experience, clubhouse leadership experience. He's insurance, whether or not you can use Devin Williams in the back end. If you can't, then you got Craig Kimbrell. If you can, it's a 1-year deal and you can easily get out of it. He's probably an easy trade candidate at the trade deadline, depending on what team is out there looking for a former all-star closer. And speaking of former all-star, Michael Conforto signed a 2-year deal with the San Francisco Giants. We talked about we talked about them regarding the Carlos Correa deal, but they were also active with the bullpen, adding former Brewer Taylor Rogers. And this one kind of shocked me, I'm not going to lie. And I'm not ragging on Taylor Rogers. I think prior to the Josh Hader trade, he was also having a really good year as a number 2 closer in baseball at the time, only behind Josh Hader. Signed a 3-year, $33 million deal with the San Francisco Giants. He reunites with his brother down there. Actually, his identical twin brother down there, wherever you may be, in San Francisco. For me, it's down and over. So that was a eye opener, I guess you could say, for the San Francisco Giants. But they're obviously trying to make moves after the Carlos Correa, whatever you want to call it, mix up, whatever, for them. So that's the moves that they've been making so far. And a three-team trade that took place as well. The Arizona Diamondbacks sent Dalton Varsho to Toronto. They get Gabriel Marino and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., both teams, in my opinion, checking several boxes of needs for this one. It's a deal that was in the works. The Milwaukee Brewers were named in an MLB article regarding the couple of prospects that the Brewers have in regards to who Arizona and Toronto had. And it seems like, just looking from the outside in, that the Brewers have been active in the trade market. And I'm not just talking about the ones that they have made. There have been more that they have not made, based off of what I've read, than they have made. So again, keep your eye out on the Milwaukee Brewers as far as trades go going forward. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with 43-year-old pitcher Rich Hill going to our friends to the east in the Pittsburgh Pirates. He signs a 1-year deal with them. Again, just not sure exactly where the Pirates stand and what they're doing. Them in Cincinnati seem to kind of be scratching their own heads and trying to figure out exactly what it is. But the Brewers aren't, in my opinion, too far ahead of them, but they are for now. And of course, the Cubs and the Cardinals round out the NL Central, who the Cardinals have been kind of quiet since they've signed their catcher in Wilson Contreras. So we'll see what they do. Again, it's late December. This is kind of a weird time for baseball. College football is taking over a little bit. The NFL is getting into a playoff race. You're going to hear deals. You're going to see moves. It's going to be I think fewer than you have in the past few weeks. But if you're the Milwaukee Brewers, you hope that some of those include you, and especially if you're trying to improve your roster, whether that's at third base, second base, maybe the bullpen, closer, whatever it may be. Something's got to at least be done, I think, in my opinion, for the Milwaukee Brewers to improve. But those are just a few of the many moves over the course of the offseason, over the past week or so. I'll do my best for you guys to try to cover those for sure. In the NL Central, I want to try to keep tabs, and starting in January, we're going to be doing weekly check-ins with the Cubs and the Cardinals, Pirates, and the Reds, and kind of gauge where those franchises are and how people feel about, people that cover them for Locked On, see how they feel about them. But again, we'll cover the league as a whole, but I do want to focus a lot of it on the NL Central, because obviously that is where our concern is, right? But that's that's just the past week. And of course, there's so many others. So we'll continue to cover those. But thank you guys for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On Brewers podcast everywhere you get your podcast. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. Just go to the search bar, search Locked On Brewers. Again, we are over there on YouTube, less than 150 subscribers away from 1,000. So check it out over there on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, as we do all offseason, we will continue to look at what the Milwaukee Brewers have done, what they haven't done, what they could do. And I'm actually going to step away from baseball, and we're going to provide you 3 non-baseball related wishes for the Milwaukee Brewers heading into 2023. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Thank you for making me part of your day. And as always, go Brewers.